So, in a few days, PewDiePie is going to become the most popular guy on YouTube. Pretty depressing, isn't it? Well, I know everything's been said about the subject, so there's not much worth adding on the matter. There's just one comment that I see sometimes that I think is worth responding to, and it's, why does it even matter that PewDiePie is so goddamn popular? Well, here's the deal. A lot of people who aren't in the know of any genre or form of media or anything like that will often judge said media based on what its most popular constituents are like. And in Let's Playing's case, that would be PewDiePie. Now, we're all aware of PewDiePie's so-called style. He's a screaming, unfunny, unlikable cunt. And as a result, those people who could potentially get interested in Let's Playing if they just saw some of the better ones, they instead dismiss it as just some random nonsensical craze and just assume that all of us are like PewDiePie. Which is understandably not the truth. I mean, look at me. I don't claim to be the best or anything close to the best Let's Player, but at least, I try to put on a decent show for you guys. It doesn't show because I don't spend eons editing and stuff, but I put genuine effort into these videos. So, to see people like that who do the complete opposite, get super successful, and then people think all Let's Players are like these more popular ones, like PewDiePie and Toboscus and all these other unlikable douches that think, oh, I'm gonna get popular on YouTube, I'm just gonna copy PewDiePie. And guess what? It works! It fucking works! So in a nutshell, the beef that I have with PewDiePie being so goddamn popular is twofold. Yep, two big slabs of meat that will go in the shittiest burger ever. One, it's an insult to those of us who actually care enough to put on a decent product. And two, it causes other people who don't really know anything about Let's Playing to think everyone is like these more popular guys who don't really have any funny content, informative, anything of the sort. But I gotta say, though, it's really appropriate when you think about it, because we all know how much YouTube has been going down the shitter these last couple years, so it's eerily appropriate in a way that something as outrageously terrible as PewDiePie becomes the face of YouTube, its largest phenomenon. Also, related to that, fun little story, well, not really fun, but, well, you'll see. I've been shown that episode of Game Theory where they talk about how PewDiePie's background helped propel him to the top of the charts on YouTube. And, you know, the fact that he's from Sweden, he moved to Italy, he makes videos in English, though judging by what he sounds like in his videos, the jury's still out on that. But, yeah, that supposedly comes together into a perfect storm that allows it to be YouTube's super dominant force. That and the nature of Let's Playing itself to begin with. I would have to disagree with that. There is one more thing that they forgot, and quite frankly, in my opinion, it's unquestionably the most important thing. It's the fact that he appeals to the lowest common denominator. Because, let's be honest here, let's take a guy from Sweden who makes videos in English, moves to Italy, same thing, except he's competent. I guarantee you that he will never see the day where he gets to 7-digit subscriber counts. Ever. But then again, I guess it's a bit naive of me to expect Let's Playing to be any different from more conventional media, such as radio and television. I mean, there's a pretty good reason why the Discovery Channel isn't about science, why the History Channel isn't about history, why MTV isn't about music, why Sci-Fi isn't about science fiction, why Fox News isn't about news, and I could go on and on and on. But enough about that depressing train of thoughts. I just wanted to come back a bit to the subject of Mega Pokémon, since we had, one more tidbit since the last video I recorded, namely the fact that Mega Mawile will have boosts to defense and special defense, which is appropriate. You know, pretty good choice, considering, well, huge power pretty much got the whole attack thing covered, so now it's going to be a really fucking slow-ass, but incredibly powerful and incredibly bulky tank. Of course, depending on how the fairy type turns out to be defensively. Is it going to be as much of a steel ruiner as rock is? That remains to be seen, but we'll know next month! Next month's Korokoro is going to have the full type chart, including the fairy type, so this should be interesting. I'm also wondering if there will be any other changes to existing matchups. For example, will they finally make steel weak to poison? Corrosion, goddammit, haven't they ever heard of that? I mean, I guess the logic was that, you know, robots can't breathe poison gases, so they're not affected by it, so I guess that's what they were going for, except for the fact that only a very small minority of steel types are actually robotic. Heck, I'm not sure why the likes of Lucario and Mawile are even steel type to begin with, so yeah, I would really much rather have steel weak to poison because of corrosion. It just makes a lot more sense that way, in my opinion. So, yeah, there was also the fact that I wanted to point that out. There's going to be a playable demo that will be playable soon in Japan, Korea, and Germany, I believe. So I'm really hoping some of the more alert people will tell us what's the deal with those Mega Evolutions, since the demo is supposed to have a major focus on them. Hopefully we're going to find out things like the magnitude of the stat boost. But one thing that we're practically guaranteed to find out is what that second condition for transforming is. Really looking forward to figuring out what that one is, because it can make or break many of these forms. By the way, I'm just going to comment on the game for a second here, because my Volcarona has been fighting a bunch of Scolipeds in these last few battles, and I don't know if you've noticed, but Ember melts these things. It managed to one-shot level 31 Scolipeds, and it came very close on a level 34 one. So, when I was saying that coming from Volcarona, Ember was fucking lethal, I was not kidding. I mean, sure, Scolipede isn't the bulkiest Pokemon around, especially considering that, well, I'm facing a Stoutland, which is a rather sturdy species in comparison, so let's see how a neutral Signal Beam does, just over half. But my point still stands. For taking out Bug and Ice types, Ember is really surprisingly effective, and keep in mind, what you're seeing here is a Volcarona with barely anything resembling EVs. So imagine for a second later on in the game when I get more EVs into special attack and all these other stats that it really could use EVs in. That is going to become a fucking wrecking ball. Imagine even when it gets Fire Blast. No need to go for Flamethrower or stuff like that. Just Fire Blast. Suddenly, it's going to become an unstoppable force. And by the way, I just mentioned EVs for kicks. EVs are going to be actually visible in X and Y. They've got like this little chart that you can see that resembles the one that you could see the contest stats on in Gens 3 and 4, except now it's for EVs. And yeah, I appreciate the fact that they're more visible, but at the same time, You know what the problem with that is? It's the fact that they had to come up with an official term for EVs. And you know what they chose? You really want to know what they chose? Base stats! Yep, they did that. They took a term that already meant something else to the community, and then they made it mean something else entirely. And you know what? I could see people get confused about this. Either more veteran players who understand what EVs are, what base stats are, but then they play this game, X and Y, I mean, and then they're not in the know as to what, you know, the fact that base stats is the official term for EVs, and they talk about increasing base stats, and people just get confused. Or novice players who understand what the concept of, well, what they consider to be base stats is, then they get online and then they realize, well, base stats in the community's mind are something else entirely, and what the game called base stats is called EVs. You get what I'm saying? It's just going to be a huge mess to explain. And with that, I've run out of trainers for today, which is Tuesday. So I'm going to do something I don't do very often. I'm going to manipulate the clock a little bit so I can fight some more trainers, hopefully tennis asses. I'm going to do that, and I'll see you when that's done. Okay, we are now officially Wednesday in the game. I'm still recording this on Tuesday. Don't worry. And as for the reason why I really want to do these sports stadiums and get done with them completely before moving on is because next up I want to go back into the Relic Passage and clear all that stuff that I didn't do the first time, which is to say everything aside from a few boulders. And for that, I want my team to be as strong as possible before entering a cave because, you know, backtracking to the Pokemon Center isn't quite as easy in a cave. It goes without saying. Oh god, I'm gonna get paralyzed, am I? No! Zebstrika gets burned and I don't get paralyzed. Get ready because you're gonna see a whole lot of Flame Body activations this Let's Play, it seems. I've already gotten a few of them today. I'm not complaining though, because Flame Body, for all that competitively, it's just too unreliable. In-game, it's actually pretty decent when you're using it in conjunction with a Pokemon that can take hits. Well, Volcarona isn't exactly a model of bulk, especially on the physical side, but the fact remains that just burning the opponents that dare take you on with contact moves, suddenly those contact moves are lowered significantly in power, except for Petal Dance, which to my knowledge is the only contact move that is special. But Volcarona resists Petal Dance 4 times, so that's not a big issue. But yeah, what I was saying before was that, well, after the Relic Passage, I'm going to head out onto Route 6, and then it's going to be Charged Stone Cave, and I want my Volcarona to be ready for that as much as possible, because Ember melts so much stuff in that place, it's not funny. Joltik, owned by Ember. Clink, owned by Ember. Ferroseed, quadruple weak to Ember. So that basically leaves a Nosepass and Boldor as potentially problematic Pokemon that I can just switch to Lilligant for anyway, or maybe Excadrill, depends. So this is why I'm really going out of my way to get Volcarona ready for these places. And there are still a few more trainers left to